Hey everyone, it's Kenji, and we're gonna make some sweet and sour chicken. This is sort of a Chinese American style sweet and sour chicken. I learned this recipe. Well, the original recipe I learned from I had a old colleague when I worked at a restaurant called Uni in Boston. His name is Chung, and he was from Macau. But he used to work at a bunch of Chinese restaurants, Hong Kong style Chinese restaurants, as well as Chinese American restaurants. And so for staff meal, he would sometimes make this sweet and sour chicken. The secret was actually pineapple juice and ketchup. That's what sweet and sour chicken sauce mostly is made from. This is chicken thigh, works with chicken breast as well. I'm modifying his recipe a little bit because what I'm doing is I'm gonna velvet the chicken first, rather than just stir frying it. So velveting is a technique that you do, you can do it for chicken thigh, you can also do it for chicken breast. It's especially useful for chicken breast, as well as sort of leaner cuts of pork, because what it does is it keeps the meat really super tender and juicy and moist. And it does that through a combination of cornstarch and egg whites and baking soda. The way it works is that, well, baking soda and egg whites are both alkaline. Egg whites can actually be quite alkaline, so it depends how old they are. But when eggs are first laid, the whites are mildly alkaline. As they get older and older, they can get up to a pH of over 9, which is actually even more alkaline than the maximum pH you can get by adding baking soda to water, which I think is like 8.3. But either way, the alkalinity helps the meat. It prevents muscle fibers from tightening up as much. And so they tend to remain more tender and hold more moisture. And then cornstarch, what that does is we're going to coat it in cornstarch, and what that does is that as the meat exudes liquid, that liquid gets kind of trapped. And it also prevents the meat from, it sort of adds like a protective barrier, similar to how, say like the batter on fried fish for fish and chips or fried chicken, that creates sort of a protective barrier that prevents the meat from coming in direct contact with really high heat. And so all that helps keep it a little more tender. I'm gonna keep the knife out. All right, so got my chicken. This is about a pound of chicken thigh. You can also use chicken breast. I'm gonna put it in a bowl here. Get rid of my meat cutting board. All right, so now we're gonna go in with about a teaspoon and a half or so of cornstarch. About a half teaspoon of baking soda. This recipe, by the way, is going to be in my new book, which will be out next year. Not this year, but next year. 2021 is when it should be out, hopefully. We'll see. It's all about cooking in a wok. We're going to add about 2 teaspoons of sugar. About half a teaspoon of kosher salt. Teaspoon Shaoxing wine. You can also use dry sherry or white wine. Teaspoon of light soy sauce. And then finally, an egg white. You can save this egg yolk for another use. Egg yolk, you can add an extra egg yolk to your scrambled eggs, and they'll be excellent, or to your omelet. All right, so we're gonna kind of vigorously massage this. We really want to be rough with it. That's gonna help the marinade penetrate the chicken, and it's also gonna make the chicken a little bit more tender. Mechanical separation, mechanical tenderization. All right, now we're just gonna set that aside for about 15 minutes. Well, ideally at least 15 minutes. Most likely it'll be less because I'm just gonna go straight start to finish right here without really taking the time to rest. And meanwhile, in that wok you saw on the stove, I've just got some water in here that we're gonna use that to simmer the chicken. But in the meantime, I'm gonna get the rest of my ingredients ready. So, vegetables for the stir fry are an onion, or half an onion, or 1 small onion that we're gonna cut into kind of largish dice like that. A green bell pepper, which we're gonna cut into similar dice. and a red bell pepper. These peppers today, my daughter, who's now 3.5, we did a little test run today where she wanted to do the shopping by herself. So I followed her around in the market, but she went to the grocery store. She picked out the peppers we were gonna buy. She picked out the onion. She put them all in a little shopping cart. I gave her some cash, and she went up to the cashier by herself, put the stuff on the conveyor belt, took the change, said thank you. It was all pretty much a great success, I'd say. She has a great career as a shopper lined up for it. Oh, I don't know if you've seen my other videos, you see me do peppers that way. I kind of hold them from the top and fillet them around the outside, and then you're left with just the sort of pith and the seeds. And I think it's the easiest way to dice peppers. All right, so I got a red bell pepper, a green bell pepper, and an onion. That's gonna be our vegetables. Now we got our aromatics. So I got 4 cloves of garlic that have seen better days, but they'll be all right for a dish like this. Just gonna cut the tops off. Bang them into my mortar and pestle. Ginger, we're gonna use probably about this much. If you want, you can do it with the tip of a knife, or if you've got a spoon, you can also do ginger with a spoon. Skin comes right off with a spoon. See? Easy peasy. Easy peasy Japanesey. I suppose this is easy peasy Chinese American easy. All right. Now we're just going to give this a pound. I find mortar and pestle is the easiest way to kind of break up garlic and ginger for a stir fry. I find it to be much easier than chopping by hand, because you can just kind of get it all in there and pound until it's as fine as you like it. The garlic doesn't stick to your knife, it doesn't get into your cutting board. Sometimes it flies out like that, that's okay. And you also end up getting a little more flavor out of it that way. All right, we got our aromatics. Now, the last thing is our sauce. Okay, so for a sauce, this is a 20-ounce can of pineapples that I've already used half of because I made this recipe earlier today when I was testing some woks. So what you want is a 10-ounce can of pineapples, and you want that juice. That's going to form the base of your sauce. And then separately, we'll take those pineapple rings. You can use rings or chunks, it doesn't really matter. But canned pineapple is kind of key here, or at least canned pineapple juice. You can use fresh pineapple plus canned pineapple juice, but you need that juice for the sauce. Okay, we'll cut this into chunky bits like that. Those will go in there. All right, so we got the juice from a 10-ounce can of pineapples. Then we're gonna do about 3 tablespoons of ketchup. And real ketchup, please, not any of that fancy stuff that doesn't really taste like ketchup. About 3 tablespoons of ketchup. About 2 tablespoons of vinegar. So those are your sweet and sour elements. It does need a little bit of extra sweetness, so we're gonna go in with about a tablespoon, maybe a little bit more of sugar. Teaspoon of soy sauce. Splash of Shaoxing wine, or dry sherry, or white wine. And last but not least, a little cornstarch. So about 2 teaspoons of, that's about 2 teaspoons, I think. Somewhere between 1 and 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. And we're gonna whisk this all together. You always want to whisk cornstarch into sauces cold. If you try and whisk it into a hot sauce, or you try and put it into the wok after the sauce is already in there, it will not thicken properly, and it'll turn into little clumpy bits. Okay, now we're ready to go. All right, so velveting, the technique is called velveting. You typically, like in a Chinese restaurant, they would do this with oil. What you would do is you do something called passing through, where you'd have about a couple cups of oil in your wok. Then you'd take your marinated meat and very briefly, for about 20-30 seconds, pass it through the oil. At home, I generally don't do it with the oil because I don't like having to use oil for 20-30 seconds and then strain it out and store it somewhere and reuse it, etc. At a restaurant, it makes sense. At home, I do it with water. And the good news is it actually works really well with water. It's actually, to my taste, it's almost indistinguishable. So what we're doing is that chicken, we're going to slowly drop it in here. You don't want to drop it in one big clump because then it'll stick together. So you drop it in like a piece at a time. Okay, just like that. That's probably about 3 cups of, or sorry, about a quart of water I had in there boiling, which is enough for about a pound of chicken. One of the nice things about this velveting technique is that normally when you stir fry, if you're making a dish where you're stir frying raw meat from the start, you're very limited at home because your home burner is generally too weak to be able to maintain a good searing temperature once you add like a pound of meat to it. So you have to kind of cook in batches. With this technique, you don't have to worry about that because most of the cooking gets done in the water, and then later we're just going to very briefly stir fry it with the vegetables and the sauce, just till it gets coated in the sauce. So you want to do this for about between 30 seconds to a minute, depending on how strong your burner is and how vigorous that boil was. I'm going to basically let this come back to a brief simmer, and that's going to tell me that it's done. So you can see the chicken kind of ends up with this thin coating on it, and that's going to help the sauce adhere, and that's also what's going to give it that really tender texture. If you've ever wondered why chicken in Chinese restaurants and stir fries is so much more tender and sort of slippery almost than what you get at home when you stir fry, velveting is the secret. Alright, I think we're done here. So this is going to go straight out into a sheet tray. Spread it out in a single layer so that it can dry. Okay. And the rest we're just going to... Nope. We got it all. Good. Alright. Real quick rinse on this wok. Get it back over the heat. Just gonna dry it out a little. And now we're gonna let this, put a tiny bit of oil in there. This is what I do. So I get a little film of oil in the bottom of the wok, and that's basically my temperature indicator. So I'm gonna let that heat up until it starts smoking, because we really want smoking hot heat here. So this chicken will spread out. Spread it out into a single layer so that it can dry a little bit. And get all my other ingredients ready in the meantime. Oh, the last thing we're going to do, you don't have to do cashews in this, but I am going to do cashews in it because my wife likes cashews. So do I, actually. All right, so we're smoking hot now. Oil in there. Swirl it. This is called longyao, which is basically what you do at the beginning of every stir fry. You swirl oil in the hot wok to give it a nice non-stick coating. Then our vegetables are going straight in. And let them cook without moving too much for a second. And let me get a serving plate out. Little seeds in there. So that's what you're looking for. You see how there's a little bit of char on the outside of these vegetables? That's what I want. This flavor profile, exact same technique in fact. You can do it with pork. What I would do is I would take pork loin or tenderloin, cut it into thin planks the same way I did with the chicken against the grain, and then basically treat it exactly the same way as I did this chicken right now. All right, so the vegetables are sort of tender crisp, which is where I want them. So I'm gonna push them to the side, add a little bit more oil, and get my aromatics in there. So garlic and ginger in. Okay. Oh man, it smells good. All right. So we do that for about, let it stir fry for about 30 seconds, just until it's nice and aromatic and sort of the raw punch of the garlic is a little bit tame. All right, then in goes everything else. Chicken, pineapple, cashews, and our sauce. And that's it. Now we just let it cook a tiny bit until it's as thick as we want it, which I'd say we're just about there. And of course, if you like your sweet and sour chicken, if you like it a little spicy, you can stir fry some chilies into there as well, some dried chilies, or you could do some pepper flakes. I'm keeping it mild today because I think, as I've explained on these videos, my daughter has been going through a sort of anti-spicy food kick recently. So instead, we're just going to serve this with chili oil at the table. Should have got a bigger. We're going to need a bigger plate. All right. And there. Ooh. A heaping portion. Of Chinese American sweet and sour chicken, courtesy of my old friend Chris Chung. I don't care if it's authentic or not, it is delicious. You want some, Shabu? Yep. Good girl. Oh, Amon's coming over for his bite too. Here, buddy. Vegetables are tender crisp as they should be. All right. There you go. The takeout classic at home. Guys, gals, non-binary pals, I will see you next time. Bye.